Hello everyone, and welcome back to Renewed Minds. Sorry it's been so long. It's been a busy semester. And to be frank, this video has intimidated me a little bit. Last time I uploaded a video, it was on the spirit of Ham, and it was part of this series that discussed the spirit of Cain and the spirit of Ham. And I was attempting to lay out a rubric for understanding how these spirits affect the world that we live in today, because I see them at work very strongly in our society today. And it got to that moment of application, and frankly, it just the political ramifications of it, and entering into a political conversation, when I knew that there would be those that I might be stepping on some toes, was intimidating for me, and I have a hard time being confrontational. But we'll do what we can, so I want to start us out with just a review of what the spirit of Cain and the spirit of Ham represent. So these are from stories in the beginning of Genesis. Ham, or Cain rather, his story can be found starting in Genesis 4 and following through to the flood in Genesis 6. And what we see in Cain is this spirit of resentment, this victim complex, that his sacrifice is not accepted, and he feels like the world is against him as a result. And so he decides that it is the world that's corrupt, it is reality that's corrupt, and he's going to tear down reality. He's going to tear down the ideal, to tear down Abel. And he is possessed by this spirit of vengeance for his perceived slight. And he takes Abel out into the field and murders him. And then there's a refusal to accept responsibility, to look at the facts on the ground and recognize what he's done. And all of this leads to the Nephilim, and this story at the beginning of chapter 6. And it follows through the story of Cain's descendants. And there in Cain's descendants, we see this building and rising lust for power, and this escalation. We see in Lamech, he says, I have killed a young man for injuring me, or I've killed a man for injuring me, a young man for my harm. And so there's this escalation that, you hurt me and I'm going to come back all in on you. And there's also a disregard as we get into the Nephilim. There's a disregard for boundaries and institutions as the sons of man intermingle. The sons of God intermingle with the daughters of man and produce the Nephilim. And this is the final result. These mighty men, those kind of champions of sort of small groups of people who take advantage of the power that they have in those small groups of people, and take advantage of their strength and of their gifts in order to just get theirs, right? To tear down the world around them, and it's a time of violence and just evil. God says that man has corrupted his ways in all the earth, and chaos reigns. Because chaos reigns, and the reason behind it is that they have torn down all the boundaries. It's because of this disregard for boundaries, this insistence on getting vengeance at all costs, that leads to this society of just destructive chaos. And that's the spirit of Cain. The spirit of Ham, in this we see a disdain for tradition. We see that Ham, he sees his father in a moment of fallenness, in a moment of drunkenness, and he has disdain for him. He takes that one flaw, and in his mind, that one flaw means that Noah is worthless, that everything that he's built, everything that he's done is worthless. There's a lack of grace. There's a pride and an arrogance too, because there's a sense in which he tries to usurp Noah. He kind of tries to bring his brothers in and do this kind of a coup thing on Noah. And so there's this pride and arrogance that like, oh, like, you know, he's fallen. I could never be like that. I could never do that. I'm better than he was. And if I was in charge, I would do a better job. I would usher in the utopia. And that's Ham. And there's this all or nothing sort of revolutionary attitude to Ham. And it leads to uniformity. We see, following the story of Ham, is the Tower of Babel. And in the Tower of Babel, there's this uniformity. It said the whole world had one speech and one word, one lip. And it's the idea is that they were possessed by a single, simple, all-encompassing idea. And that idea was to build a tower to heaven and to tear down God and take his place. So there's this idea that we know everything, that we're so smart, we're so powerful, we're so evolved or whatever, that we don't need God, and that we don't need the wisdom that he's given to us through our fathers, through our ancestors. And so they build this tower. They try to establish themselves as rulers of the universe. The power that they have, they try to take it and they try to bring all things in under their domain. And that's the spirit of Ham, that it tries to take the simple idea and it tries to explain and rule over everything using that simple idea. And what happens as a result is their languages are confused. God comes down and he confuses their languages. And what's going on there is that when you have something that grows that big, when you have something that tries to take the place of God, it loses touch. It tries to climb too high and it loses touch with the ground. It's no longer able to communicate with or to interact with reality on the ground. And so when people try to do this, you lose the ability to communicate with people that are living in reality, because you have been so consumed by this one idea. And that is the spirit of Ham. So what I want to go through here is the way that these two spirits, that I see them active in politics today. And this is the part that I'm nervous about. But I want to start with the Republicans because with the right, because I see I personally consider myself to be on the right, and so I want to start with the log in my own eye, in a sense. And the reason I am on the right is because I see there's a danger of some of these spirits having influence on the right, and that's always a danger. It's always something we have to watch for. But I do believe that that the left is completely possessed by these spirits, and I'll explain that. So on the right, danger I see there's kind of a threefold danger. The first two are kind of like in these dark corners of the internet. And I see these as somewhat less dangerous because the society as a whole, like we've dealt with these things before and we know the warning signs and we're very much on guard against it. And so I very much doubt that it's going to get any sort of strong following. But the danger is in our own personal lives. And so that we need to watch out for this kind of conspiratorial thinking. And so the first is the sort of I forget what it's called now, but there's a kind of like anti-woman guy movement. It's led by people like Andrew Tate, who have, in reaction to this idea on the left that men should not fill traditional roles, that men shouldn't be strong men, that men shouldn't be leaders of their household. In reaction to that, the kind of Andrew Tate crowd, Red Pill Bros, that's what it's called. They have this idea that women are the property of men, that daughters are the property of their fathers, wives are the property of their husbands, and that they ought to be utterly subjected to them in all ways. This is a twisting. It's a distortion, and it's exactly what it's kind of exactly the distorted view of traditional family that the left has. It's like they kind of said, well, all right, fine. If that's what you're going to see us as, then that's what we'll be. And this is unhealthy. It's not a good way to have a family. The family should be held up by love. It should be bound together with love. We're to love our wives as husbands. We're to love our wives as Christ loved the church, that he gave his life up for her. We give our lives for our wives, for our family. And that's what it means to be a good husband. And our family is not for us. Our family is for God. It's for society. It's for higher things than we are. And we're merely the head of the household. And so we need to care for our family, care for our wives, as we would care for our own bodies. That's the scriptural view. The other thing the other kind of dark internet movement is the Groypers. And this is, again, a movement that claims a place on the right. And again, a movement that I don't think serious people on the right give any credence to. And I don't think it has a serious movement on the right. These kinds of movements, they have I think the statistics are something like 6 to 10% of people actually explicitly hold these views, both on the left and on the right. But the problem, I think, on the left is that there's no defense over there against their extremists. The right seems to have, in my opinion, a fairly solid defense against the extremists on the right. So the Groypers, they have, they're anti-Semites and racists, and they believe in white supremacy. That's explicitly, they believe in white supremacy. They're led by people like Nick Fuentes, who's a Holocaust denier. And it's unacceptable. It's historically ridiculous to deny the Holocaust. And anti-Semitism and hatred of the Jews in general has been a marker for evil throughout history. Anytime anyone kind of devolves deeply into evil, a lot of times they wind up hating the people of God for obvious reasons. If you set yourself against God, you're going to set yourself against his people as well. And so the Jews kind of tend to be a canary in the coal mines for this kind of thing. And so, watch that. And I've seen people, this is one that I have seen people on the right, Candace Owens in particular, I've seen her descend towards that, not fully, but she's drifted in that direction through her friendship to Kanye West. And Kanye West is kind of close with Nick Fuentes. And there's that kind of anti-Semitic attitude, and it's an evolution. It's a kind of the problem is this gray line that people get this. There's this red pilling that happens where they realize that a lot of what the media says about the right, and in calling people on the right racists and sexists and bigots and all those things, is manipulative and lying. And as a result, there's this tendency to kind of say, to kind of look at people that are being accused of those things and give them the benefit of the doubt every time, and give them too much of the benefit of the doubt, right? And so, you kind of sit there and listen to Nick Fuentes as he's spouting his hatred, and refuse to cast judgment because he's been accused of the same things that people that are genuinely good people have been accused of. And so that kind of drifting is easy to fall into. It's easy once you kind of break out of a bubble chamber like that to kind of lose your ability to distinguish between truth and falsehood, because Candace Owens, what happened to her, I think, is that she realized she used to be liberal, and she realized that the reason she was a liberal was because she had been kind of insulated from any sort of conservative arguments, and she felt she was lied to, and then over time, I think that she just kind of lost that ability to distinguish between credible people and people that just aren't. That's a danger. That's a danger that can happen to us individually, as we realize that everyone that shares the news, everyone that speaks politically has a bias. There's a tendency to kind of drift towards the more conspiratorial thinkers, because everything's on the table. like when you suddenly realize that bias so deeply informs so much of what we're being told, everything kind of gets tossed up in the air, and it's like there's a danger of losing the ability to distinguish between credible and not credible. So that's the other danger that I see on the right. And then the last one is, I think, a temporary danger, and that's this like hyper loyalist Trump movement. So there are factions on the right in the Trump movement that respond to any criticism of Trump with like spittle-flecked rage, and it's not healthy. I think that you ought to be able to take criticism of the people you support. You ought to be able to take criticism of the ideas that you hold without getting angry. And the danger there is that that's the spirit of Ham coming in, by the way. So these other two spirits, the Grapers, and honestly, all like both of those are kind of spirit of Ham kind of things. That there's a simple idea, right? A simple idea that is grabbed onto and used to explain all things. This kind of attitude of if you're not all in on Trump, then you're no good. There are some that I have seen on the internet, kind of major, influential figures on the internet that have been like that. Yeah, it's something to watch out for. It's definitely something to watch out for. That kind of frankly, cancel culture. We don't want to engage in that. And so those are the dangers that I see on the right. On the other hand, I don't believe any of the kind of panic over Trump that he's going to become a dictator and install himself and lead a coup and all this stuff that some of the people on the left have kind of have talked about. I don't see that as anything like a credible possibility. And so this, Trump loyalism is likely to be a temporary thing. There is also a danger of it transferring to the kind of next inheritor of the Trump movement. And so we will need on the right to watch out for that. And it's a genuine danger. Now on the left, what I will say is I believe that most of the primary movements on the left have been completely possessed by the spirit of Ham for most of my adult life. I think since the second term of Barack Obama, this has been a serious problem on the left, and something that I think has gotten to the point where it is the radicals that are driving the Democratic Party. And I want to be careful here, but what I am not saying that every Democrat, or even that the majority of Democrats, are in favor of these things. The polls might say that actually, but I don't think that's true. I think that if there's if kind of the things are explained in stark terms, people flinch back and react against the really extreme ideology on the left. And I think that, again, the polls, I think, do actually show that the really extreme activists on the left make up something like 10 to 15% of the Democratic electorate. It's a small percentage. The problem is that there's no defense on the left. That that the leaders on the left are allowing these radicals to drive the ship, to drive the car, and that's the danger. I think that's the issue, and the reason why there needs to be pushback. I think that there needs to be a reckoning in the Democratic Party if they're to continue as one of the major parties in any sort of a healthy political system. So what do I mean by this? Well, let's go. I'm going to go through just a few areas. I think that it shows up in most of the Democratic policy positions, but I'm going to start us off with feminism. So feminism is, and all of these have this. There's a core idea of victim and victimizer. That those that are successful are the victimizers, and those that are not are the victims. Those that have power because they have oppressed those who do not have power, and that's always the explanation. There's no other explanation given, and so in feminism, there's this idea of the patriarchy. There's this idea that men are in charge because they are oppressing women, that men are not leaders of the home, but they are tyrants in the home, and that way of doing things needs to be overturned, and any defense of it is toxic and sexist and evil. And that's the current attitude of feminism, as far as I can see it. There have been times when the feminist movement has been a genuine good. I think during the suffragettes and during that time when women were looking for the right to actually go out and live kind of alternate lifestyles to the nuclear family. There are out there women that don't want to be married, that don't want to have kids, that don't find fulfillment in that, and that's fair. They should be free to do to pursue happiness and to pursue virtue in the best way that they can, to follow after how God has made them to be. And I want to be careful in my language there, right? Because I think family is a genuine good. And a lot of times the things that we choose to pursue instead of family, both men and women, are lesser goods and often lead us astray. But there are those that are not made for family. Paul said so himself, and that's fair. That there needs to be freedom to do that. But the feminist movement, as it is today, looks down on mothers, looks down on motherhood, looks down on the nuclear family, and thinks of it as something to be overturned. And again, this isn't the majority opinion, even in the Democratic Party, I don't think. I think that it's the radicals, and again, I think it's that these radicals are driving the direction of the Democratic Party, and that's a problem. That the helm needs to be won back from these radicals in the Democratic Party. The next aspect of this is race. So race has been a big issue, frankly, ever since the second term of Barack Obama. He promised to unify us, and after his presidency, we were more divided along racial lines than ever. And I think the reason is because of the what's called critical race theory. It shows up in most circles as diversity, equity, and inclusion. You may have heard those things. And the idea, again, is this idea that those races, minority races, that have less power in the society, have less power because they have been oppressed by the majority races. And that there is racism, systemic and inherent in the society, and that things need to be overturned in order for equity to come to be. Again, it's that spirit of Ham. It's the spirit of Ham that yes, we have a flawed history with race, absolutely. But that does not mean that everything that this country has built, that everything that we have in this culture, all that our forefathers have built in this culture, is irrecoverable, is irredeemable. And that's the attitude. That's the attitude among the extreme movement on the left, is that Western culture needs to be overturned. Barack Obama himself said that he was going to fundamentally transform our nation. He said that, I think it was Obama, that said that racism is in the DNA of our country. These are extreme statements, very extreme statements, and I do not believe that they're true. I think that the civil rights movement and all of that are a natural outflow of the principles that were set down by the founding fathers. And they may not have realized the full implications of those principles, that man is made in the image of God. No matter how he looks, he is in the image of God, and he is valuable and precious. And that attitude was bound over time to overcome the sort of natural instinct toward racism that we have as a culture. We have a natural instinct to fear and to distrust those that are not like us. It's a natural reaction. It's a natural. It's an outflow of our love for kin. Right? That there are those that are like us and they are kin, and there are those that are not like us, and we don't know them, and so they could be anything, and that's a natural instinct, and I think that it needs to be countered by the recognition that even though they don't look like us, even though maybe they don't talk like us or believe like we do, they're still valuable human beings, and God loves them, and he wants them to be a part of his kingdom. And so we need to use that Christian ethic to combat that instinct in us. But that does not mean that we overthrow our culture, right? I think that our culture has good bones, has good roots, and that what we need to do with it is to do as Shem and Japheth did. So in the story of Ham comes to Shem and Japheth and wants them to come and mock Noah with him, right? Wants them to come and degrade Noah along with him. And Shem and Japheth do not. They put a blanket over their shoulders and they cover the nakedness of their father. And symbolically, what that means is that they recognize the flaws of Noah. They recognize that his current state is not a good thing, right? His current state is less than ideal. But they also recognize that there's wisdom and there are good things that come from what he has built. And so they the idea is to go back to the principles that made our forefathers great, and to reinvigorate them, to revive them, and to recognize how they apply in the world today, to see the mistakes that our fathers made, and to see the good that they made as well, and to live according to their good, and to turn from their evil. That's what we do. That's covering the nakedness of our Father, and so that I think is the correct response. And so that's the second thing. The last aspect of this that I want to talk about is the gender ideology. This I include, frankly, homosexuality in this, because I think that all of it, from homosexuality through transgenderism, is a tearing down of the division, of the boundary, the distinction between men and women. So in homosexuality, what that is it's saying that there's men and men can make a marriage, women and women can make a marriage. There's nothing particularly distinct about men and women and their roles in a marriage, and a man can fill the wife role just as well as a woman can, and so that's the same thing. It's a marriage. A marriage is a marriage. Love is love, right? That's not true. Men and women are different. They are different. They're built to be different. God made us as complements to one another, and that's why a marriage is what it is. It's between a man and a woman, and it's that way because we complement. We complete each other, and that's what it means to form a family, is to reunite. To unite and to take those apparent opposites of the man and the woman, and to bring them together into something greater than the sum of its parts. So that I think is it's an argument that we're currently on the losing side of in our culture, but I have hopes that we can win it back. And then beyond that, into the transgender aspect, again, this is kind of going down that logical path. If there's no difference between the roles of men and women, then what's the difference between men and women at all? And why should a man not become a woman, or a woman become a man? And there's this tearing down of that distinction, that I think is a welcoming in of chaos, and I think it's something of the spirit of Ham, where it tries to bring all things together into one thing, and you can see this in the kind of alphabet soup of the name: LGBTQ, IAA 2. Q again. There's so many letters. It just, you can find these acronyms like going on for like forever, before they finally just decided to call it LGBTQIA+. They finally realized, oh, we're parodying ourselves now, and we need to stop and just put a plus there. It's taking all of these identities and trying to put them together under the same rubric, and it just does not. It doesn't work, right? And what happens is there's tension between these identities, and these identities don't really live in the same world, and they definitely don't live in the world we live in the real world, where men and women are different. But they, even in making up their own worlds, they all have different worlds, and they can't unite. It just does not work. And so there's that spirit of Ham, where the confusing of the languages, the confusing of the ways of speaking, and the confusing of the ways of viewing the world. But because all of these are minorities, all of these are on the fringe, on the outside of normality, they're brought in by the left because like, that continual idea of the left is that those that are not at the center are not at the center because they've been oppressed, and we need to center them. We need to center the fringe. That's the idea of the left. Yeah, it does not work. It's not going to work. What happens when you when you take what is on the outside and you bring it into the center is things just stir, and you wind up just with chaos, just like the Tower of Babel, right? It doesn't say it in the passage, but tradition says that the tower fell, right? It fell because it was not built on a unified foundation. It wasn't built with any real connection to reality, and we need to have the humility when we're living our lives to be corrected by reality when we run up against it, and I do not see that humility on the left, and so those are three of the things that I see as driving the cultural agenda of the left, is feminism. So, and actually not just feminism, but anti-masculinity is how I would describe it. And then race and diversity, equity, inclusion kind of stuff, and then the gender ideology and this transgender movement. And you can look at the Biden administration and at Kamala Harris's record on these things. And they are in line with the radical left in every sense on these cultural issues. So if you think that's cause for concern, maybe you should vote for the other guy. And that's as close as I will come to a political plug. Hopefully you found this video helpful. There are other aspects in which I see the spirit of Cain and the spirit of Ham. Especially, I think, in our politics in general, I do also see the spirit of Cain enact in ascendancy, and that sort of escalation, the tit for tat, and that's definitely a danger as well, because the more you do that, the more you cause division. The more division there is, the less you see the other side as human, and the less you see the other side as human, the more willing you are to do whatever it takes to destroy them. And man, that's a bad road to go down. Yeah, pray that we don't go down that road. Pray that we're not already too far down that road, because if we keep down that road, the flood is coming, and yeah, the nation does not survive the flood. So, like I said in my other videos, the way that we really fight this, I think that there's a right way to vote that can have some impact. You know, Christ says in the book of Matthew, he talks about in the parable of the talents, that we should not waste the gifts that we are given, the power that we are given. And so I would encourage you to vote wisely. But I think that long-term politics are not the solution. It is family, and it is the church, it is local community that are the solution for this. And even if the flood comes in, the people are still here. And you will still have to live your life. And so I would encourage you to build a strong family, build a strong community around yourself, find a church that is vibrant and alive, and that can encourage you and build you up in Christ, because that's what gets us through the flood. And so, yeah, that's my encouragement. Like, that's the real way that we fight, because our battle is not against flesh and blood, not really. It is against principalities and powers. And it's only through the cross that we fight those. So hopefully this has been helpful. It's been renewed minds, and get out there, spread the gospel, be ambassadors for the kingdom.